come home to God, to see that God is always working in every single thing that happens in our life. And this is the true path of yoga, of self-realization. Hi, friends. Nice of everybody to brave the conditions this morning. Shanti, who did the flowers this morning, brought them from the farm. So we were trying to get up and get out of the farm early. And I was surprised when I walked out on my porch this morning and it was dumping rain again. And yet it also it kind of felt like coming home. It just, something about it feels really nice. We're lucky to have the water. Today's topic, abiding in God. This is a pretty big one and a pretty awesome one. What else really matters except that we're abiding in God as best as we can, each one of us. This is the true path of yoga, the true path of a spiritual life, is to bring God into our own life, into our own hearts, and abide by what God gives us, by how God works with us, abide by His will, and to start letting go of more and more of this little will, this will that's been for incarnations directing my life and having me think that I want this, I want to be over there, I want this person, I want. At some point we start to realize that everything we think we want, everything we think we are, maybe it's not so important. Maybe what really matters is to ask, what do you want of me? And when we come to this part in our own spiritual life, our own life, we are coming to a really deep place. This is, we're nearing the end of this million rounds of incarnations as a human, this soul that's just on this wheel going around and around, because we're reaching a place where we're not just here to indulge in the senses, to accumulate material things, to be in this world anymore. We're here because the world is actually a school, and we're trying to graduate. And once we know we're trying to get to the finish line, that there is a goal and a purpose, that's a good place to be. And we start to surround ourselves with gurubhais or devotees, whatever word you want to use, people who are also sincerely looking for this in their life. And together we can gradually work and take the steps we need to take to start to achieve this reality of abiding in God. I was curious, I was reflecting on this word this week, abiding, to abide, and I wondered what it actually meant. I looked it up, and there's a few definitions, but the one that really resonated with me was to accept without objection. And that was interesting because it started making me think, we're all abiding by something. Most often it's not God, unfortunately. We're usually abiding by some idea that we've picked up somewhere, this thing that we're chasing after. We're abiding always. This is just the nature of the mind that we are all kind of stuck with, is that it's always thinking. It's not that we're going to be able to ever turn off the thoughts. It's that we have to start to consciously, subconsciously, and superconsciously direct those thoughts in the right direction, to accept, first of all, that this is where we've arrived at, and this is where we're going, is to abide in God. And to really tangibly start taking those steps inside of our life, no matter what God gives us. And so that can look like anything. On the outside, the spiritual path certainly doesn't look the same for any one of us. It can look like anything. It can look so beautiful. It can look hideous. It can be so much fun, and it can be really hard. And we find that in all of these steps of life, God is giving us exactly what we need. This is what it means to abide in Him, is to know that, to realize that that's what's always happening. And oftentimes it's the things that hit us the hardest, that are the hardest to accept that truth, that have the greatest power and the greatest depth for us to get to this finish line that we now know is here. I was also kind of reflecting as we drove down this idea of abiding in God and what that actually means. And my tire was flat. were trying to get down here at 8 so that Shanti could put together this flower arrangement, and got to the car, and the tire was pretty flat, and I had to figure out what to do with that, and just decided, okay, we thought about maybe switching to the farm truck, and then realized there's no way that we're going to fit everything in the farm truck, and so we just said, let's go for the first gas station. And we are driving down the road, and we're both very quiet, and it was nice, because even though the tire was flat and something could go wrong, I know I was praying, and I'm pretty sure Shanti was praying. I think that we were both very focused, and we got to the gas station, and there's no error thing. So I go in and I ask the attendant, and she says, oh, they put that out at 10 o'clock. I'm like, nobody has tire problems before 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's on Camino. So we go to Stanwood, and we go to the first gas station, and it doesn't work. We go across the street, it doesn't work. We're over 3 with a flat tire. But Shanti gets quarters from a coffee stand nearby, and we go to the 4th one, and it worked. But at that point, the precedent had been set. We both were inwardly focused almost this whole time. I was just thinking about God, and was just having so much fun. Instead of stressing out over what could have happened, it was just turned into a little blessing that I could just keep my mind focused. And I have experience with this in the car. I think many of us might. I find that driving around, when you have something go wrong, is maybe the greatest opportunity to start praying and to keep your mind focused on God. Needless to say, but this morning we made it. We got the tire pumped up after gas station 4, and then we kind of sailed all the way down here with God, and I felt it the whole way. And it made me flash back to maybe like 12 or 13 years ago. I had a similar experience, and this is when I wasn't exactly abiding by God, but I knew that was the direction I wanted to go in, sort of. And I was headed back from Ananda Village, actually, and was going to visit some friends in Los Angeles. And about 2 hours outside of the city, it was a Friday night, about 10 o'clock, I started getting excited. I was going back to the city. I got my buddies there. We've had a lot of fun in the past. And I had my favorite San Francisco garage punk band on. And I had it turned up probably as loud as it could go, embarrassingly loud, I'll just say that. And then all at once, 10 o'clock at night, I'm on the freeway, and I heard an explosion under my car. And instantaneously I knew that the vibration of the music blew my car up. I'm not even kidding. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that was the cause of it unequivocally. And I started praying like I've never prayed before. And I was confronted with an option. I'm out in the middle of 2 hours outside of the city at 10 o'clock. There's no way anybody can help me. I'm just going to go for it. And I'm just going to try to make it to Los Angeles. And for 2 hours, I had the greatest time praying so much, and there was all kinds of stuff going on underneath me that I was not clear what it was, but I stayed so focused on God, and it was so wonderful. And I pulled in there, and I remember when I pulled into the parking spot on the side of the street in Echo Park, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, it actually jerked to a stop, like it died. And I didn't care because I made it. And Monday morning, I knew I needed to address this. So I went to my old mechanic, told him, we managed to get it down Sunset like this, jerking the whole way down Sunset, just totally embarrassing. And when I got in there, they were like, it is an absolute miracle that you made it here. And they told me my transmission hose had blown, and I had transmission fluid all the way through the exhaust pipe, which is highly flammable. Now, I don't recommend repeating any of this. This was in my naivety. But the reason I bring this up, because this morning it kind of brought me back to that, the power that it has when we keep our minds focused on God. There's so much power. And that was the lesson for me, not anything to do with the car. It was that, what am I, to use the language of today's topic, what am I abiding in? What am I giving my thoughts and my energy to? What do I really believe in? And it was the last time I ever listened to this particular band, because God made it so clear to me that that was no longer the vibration of consciousness that I needed to be putting into myself. And that was just my own particular lesson there, and what it means to abide in God. And with the 4th of July coming up tomorrow, I think we can make a nice connection here to this ideal of freedom that our country really represents. We do have a sacred template that we've been handed. We don't always know that as Americans at this point. We don't always live that. But when we take this template of freedom that America represents and we apply it to ourselves, we kind of start asking, what does it mean to actually be free? What is actual freedom? Is it, my choice to do what I want? Is it that I can just go and indulge in anything because I'm free to do that? Is that what freedom is? Well, of course not. I think we reach a point where we see that even all these things we're chasing after outside of ourselves, that just enmeshes us in more and more bondage. And the truth is, we have to do that. We have to pursue those things to the extent that we haven't learned that they're not going to bring about our happiness. So it's not my job to tell you not to chase after something in the world. It's something we're all going to learn at some point, that will not ultimately bring us lasting happiness. And Yogananda had a very simple definition for what freedom actually is. He said, to do that which is good and true and righteous. And that's it. I mean, what more freedom do we want except for the ability to do that which is good, that which is born of God in our life, and to do that which is true in every circumstance. It requires a lot of us actually to be able to truly do that. And oftentimes we have to test the waters. We're given something very difficult and we have to just put our foot in and see, how does it feel, and what is the feedback that we get? And in that process, we learn more and more about what the right trajectory is for us. And we kind of just can tiptoe down that road. At some points we sprint because we catch the wind behind us and the sails go. And those are, of course, extremely blessed times. And other times it's like the wind is coming right at our face and we're pretty sure we're still supposed to go straight into it. And God is making us stronger. It's a very dynamic living relationship is what I'm trying to say, that can't ever be put in a box, and it has to be lived inside of each one of us to really know what is true and what is born of God for each of us. How we relate to what is going on in life and what we're being given tells us a lot. And often those little things that come up that are big triggers for us is God's real way of working with us in a very specific lesson we need to learn in a very specific way. And also this week, I had the return of someone in my life who I haven't seen probably since the beginning of COVID, who I've often described to friends. I've asked friends, have you ever had a heckler? You ever had someone who heckles you publicly? Yeah, I had never had one until about 8 or 9 years ago. The beekeeper at my farmers markets was so inappropriate that he would heckle me every time he saw me. And it reached a point where I just would avoid him like the plague. And it was troubling me. I had a little bit of suffering around this man and how he was behaving towards me, and I did not know what to do. Well, he came back in my life this week, which I'll get to. But what started to happen was I started tuning into his reality, because I said, God, I cannot show up at the Stanwood Farmers Market every week and have this guy start yelling at me as soon as I get out of the car, and everyone watching. I wasn't the only person, but I was his probably top target. And I started to see underneath his layers, when I forgot about myself, I started to see what he was going through. And what he saw in me was that actually he was heckling me because he didn't know how to be my friend, but he wanted to be friends. Like in a flash, I saw it through his eyes. And from that moment, I started relating to him completely differently. Every time I would see him, I would run up to him and give him a hug. Can you imagine how he first responded when I did that? And it worked. He became my beekeeper. We became great friends. And not that anyone can tell from the outside if they see us talking to each other, but I actually know that if I ever needed anything and I called him, he would be there. I know that definitively because God has worked through my relationship with him in ways I can't even really explain standing up here to you. It's just so tangible how God has done this. But one time the breakthrough moment was I was sitting at my kitchen table at the farmhouse, preparing for a Raja Yoga class to teach that night called Life is a Battlefield. And here comes Andy pulling down the driveway. And I thought, oh God, this is once he's already my beekeeper, and I'm still like, I embrace him and I despise him simultaneously. And I did not want to go out. I just wanted to hide. And as soon as that thought surfaced, I thought, no. Zach, you go over to those bees right now and you give him a hug and you be his friend. And I got off the table and I walked over to the bees and I greeted him there. And as soon as I got there, he started launching into this tirade to me about the hornets that were trying to take over the honeybee colony. And he started telling me, life is a battlefield. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me right now? And he went on for 5 minutes telling me that if the bees didn't fight, if the bees didn't stand up, that they would be killed by the hornets and their life would be over. And I mean, there was my lesson. God is just talking to me so clearly. Zach, have a spine, go hug Andy. Fight the battle with love. Well, he came back about a week ago. It's been 2 years, and he showed up at the market, and it was really interesting because there's new people at the farm with me who had never seen Andy and my relationship before. So that's another level. Now I've got people who I work with every day and who I love and respect and mutually, and now they have to see the heckler screaming at me. This is the same man. And he shows up at the market and just immediately starts launching in on me. And so what did I do? I just gave him such a good hug and rubbed his heart. He's like a big teddy bear. And I give this example because in the mind of Zach, this was impossible. There was simply no way I could handle the situation. I didn't want anything to do with this guy. And yet, when I forgot about Zach, and I stepped into the greatness of what God was trying to show me, and I said, God, what do you want me to do? Suddenly, he's my friend. And that is truly, on almost every level now, how I feel towards him. I can't say it's 100%. There's still a little Zach in there that wants to kick him, but almost 100% I know he's my friend. And God sent him to the market a week or two ago to just see, where are you at with him? Are you still relating to this as little Zach? Or can you see the big picture again? And so that's really our task for each of us, is to take these difficult circumstances that are going to come and to take the highs, the huge successes that we can, equally fall into the trap of taking pride in, and to hand them back over to God and say, God, this is your dream. You show me what to do. Because I've seen over and over again how many times we have to go through this. I do not know. And the safest place for me to live my life is knowing that I actually don't know, and that I can turn it over to God, and God can tell me and show me in his own way, in his own time, exactly the right thing, how to live in freedom, and how to walk a life that's full of goodness and truth. That comes through God, not from any of our little self. I wanted to share one more story with you guys, and it's one that I've told before. And this is from the book, The Perfect Joy of St. Francis. It's one of my favorite books about Francis. And this is the story of how the first disciples came to Francis. And this was Brother Bernardo and Father Peter. And I'm going to read a little bit, but I'll kind of set it up. In that, at the time, Francis had renounced everything and had become just a truly dedicated to Lady Poverty. He had no possessions, and he had basically dedicated his life to what God had asked him to do, which was to rebuild his church. And so he found this abandoned church, San Damiano, in the hills outside of Assisi. It was dilapidated and falling apart, and he just started stone by stone, day by day, rebuilding this by himself, because this was God's task for him at that time. And this caused quite a stir. Here was a young man from a kind of upper echelon family, and he had renounced ownership of anything, given everything away in a very dramatic scene with his father, and in the middle of town. And there's a man named Bernard, who is also of this wealthy class and of Francis's same age group. And he sees Francis in town one day begging for money to buy the stones and the mortar, and then the next day hauling them back up the hillside to build this church. And this goes on for months. Bernard seeing Francis and secretly making donations to Francis, but not knowing how to take the steps in his own life to really help Francis. And then one day Francis is in town doing his thing, trying to gather his supplies to keep building this church, and Bernard invites him over to dinner that night. And they have dinner together and they talk, and Francis tells him how he's been inspired by God. And Bernard says, "Francis, will you please do me the honor and stay the night here tonight? I don't want you to leave, I want you to stay here." And Francis says, "Oh no, I can't do that, I need to get back." And Bernard says, "No, please, I really feel that I want you to stay the night here tonight." And so Francis ultimately agrees and says, "I'll stay the night." And they both go to bed, and there's a mattress in each corner, and they both start snoring. And the thing was that neither of them was really snoring. Francis, his intention was to stay up all night praying. And Bernard had heard that Francis had been known to do that. So he fake snored also until Francis thought he was asleep, so that Francis could get back out of bed and get on his knees and start praying, which Francis did. And the entire night he said, "My God and my all." And that's where I'm going to read to you from, is this part. My God and my all, my God and my all. That was all he said, just my God and my all. Each time he said it, he paused for a moment. My God and my all. Sometimes it sounded like a sigh, other times like a joyful exclamation or a prayer or an expression of fear. Occasionally, as he said it, he covered his face with his hands. Then he would hold his arms out, or he would bow down reverently. It was a beautiful and holy sight. Bernard watched him carefully by the light of the lamp. He was so moved that he forgot to snore. Finally, as the heartfelt prayer, "My God and my all," went on and on, he repeated it each time very quietly to himself. That's Bernard repeating it. When dawn came, Francis quickly got back into bed. A little later, the church bells began to ring, and Francis and Bernard pretended that they were waking up. As soon as Bernard had dressed, he went to Francis and said, "Francis, I would like to live like you. What must I do?" Francis was surprised and overjoyed. He exclaimed, "Oh, Bernard, God be praised, God be praised." And he embraced his friend, adding, "You want me to decide that for you?" "No, I am too insignificant for that. The question is too important. But how wonderful, our Lord will help us. Let us go to the church. That's where he gives his light. How wonderful, how marvelous." They both hastened to church, each hurrying faster than the other, and finally they ran. As they entered the church of St. Nicholas, Father Peter, the vicar, was just beginning his Mass at the side altar. They heard it through in a spirit of deep recollection. When the Mass was over, Francis went right to the priest in the sacristy and explained Bernard's problem to him and asked him to consult the Gospels for Bernard. "What a lucky man," sighed the vicar, and he went with Francis to the altar where the missal was. Then Francis motioned to Bernard to approach and said to the priest, "Open the holy book 3 times in honor of the Blessed Trinity, and each time read a verse." The vicar did so. The first time it read, "If thou wilt be perfect, go sell what thou hast and give to the poor, and come follow me." The second time, "Take nothing for your journey, neither staff, nor wallet, nor bread, nor money." And the third time, with a sigh, "If anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." The priest's tears were dropping onto the page, and he was trembling like a reed. Bernard showed his acceptance by kneeling down, and then Father Peter also fell on his hands and knees. Holding out toward Francis, he begged, "Me too, me too." And that was the story of the first 2 disciples coming to Brother Francis, Brother Bernard and Father Peter. Now, I can't stand up here in good faith and tell everyone to get rid of all of their things and to follow that counsel literally. And yet I can tell you that what it takes for us to get to God is that level of renunciation in our own life, and that willingness to hand the keys over to God and say, "You drive the car." To be Arjuna and let Krishna drive the chariot, and to take everything that God gives us and to use it as an opportunity to come home to God, to see that God is always working in every single thing that happens in our life. And this is the true path of yoga, of self-realization. It's to know that in every cell of our being, in every fiber of our body. It's to wake up to that truth. So we get to know that that's true and take the steps now so that we can be free for the 4th of July and forever. I would like to close just by reciting to you guys Yoganandas' poem from Whispers from Eternity, God, God, God. And I read recently in Swami Kriyananda's book, A Place Called Ananda, that this was actually a poem that Master was given in meditation from St. Francis, which was news to me. From the depths of slumber, as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper, God, God, God. Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from Thee, I will taste Thee and mentally say, God, God, God. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on Thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. Though boisterous storms of trial shriek, and worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God, God. When mind weaves dreams with threads of memories, then on that magic cloth will I emboss, God, God, God. Every night and time of deepest sleep, My peace dreams and calls, joy, joy, joy. And my joy comes singing evermore, God, God, God. In waking, eating, working, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any, God, God, God. God be with you.